stood in the shuttle bay, adjusting his diplomatic uniform for the third time in 10 minutes. His hands were sweating. In all his years working for Earth's Galactic Relations Department, he had never been this nervous. Today, he would meet Queen Aura, the most powerful being in 300 star systems. "Stop fidgeting," Park said beside him. She was his closest friend and the team's. "You look fine, just remember the protocols. No sudden movements, no eye contact unless she initiates, and absolutely under no circumstances do you touch her." Nodded. He had memorized the rules. Everyone knew that touching a royal meant instant death. Their species had laws older than human civilization, and this was the most sacred one. The shuttle doors opened, and they stepped into the docking bay of the flagship. Had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for the reality of the Eternal Throne. The ship was the size of a small moon, gleaming with impossible metals that seemed to shift colors in the light. The docking bay alone could fit a dozen Earth cities. Guards lined the path, each standing perfectly still in their silver armor. They were tall, nearly 8 feet, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. None of them looked at the humans. None of them moved. It was like walking through a museum of statues. Commander led their small group. He was a veteran military officer, chosen because he never showed fear. But even he walked carefully, keeping his hands visible and his movements slow. They entered the throne room and forgot to breathe. The chamber stretched upward for hundreds of feet. Crystalline pillars supported a ceiling that showed the stars beyond. At the far end, elevated on a platform that floated in midair, sat Queen Aura. She was nothing like the images in the databases. Those had made her look cold, distant, almost like a statue herself. But seeing her in person, understood why people whispered that she had lived for 3,000 years. She radiated power. Her skin was paler than her guards, almost luminescent. Her eyes were deeper, darker, like looking into space itself. She wore robes that seemed made of liquid starlight, flowing around her without wind. The human delegation stopped at the designated mark, 50 feet from the platform. Commander bowed precisely 30 degrees as the protocol demanded. The others followed. Queen Aura did not acknowledge them immediately. She was reading something on a display that only she could see, her long fingers moving through the air. Minutes passed. This was also part of the protocol, new. She would greet them when she chose, and they would wait. Finally, she looked up. Her gaze moved across the group and stopped on. He felt pinned in place, like an insect under glass. She studied him with the same interest someone might give to an unusual rock. "Humans," she said. Her voice was strange, musical but cold, like wind chimes in winter. "You are the species that still touches each other." It was not a question, was not sure how to respond. Commander started to speak, but the Queen raised one finger and he fell silent. "You," she said, still looking at, you studied our culture for 7 years. You wrote a paper claiming that are emotionally isolated. Tell me, did you think I would not read it?" His mouth went dry. That paper was supposed to be academic, buried in university archives. He had not expected the Queen of the Empire to read his graduate thesis. "Your Majesty," he managed, "I meant no disrespect. I was trying to understand the differences between our species." "And you concluded that we are lonely." She tilted her head. "Interesting." Before could respond, something went wrong. A deep vibration ran through the floor. The floating platform shuddered. Alarm sounds began wailing. The Queen stood, reaching for the railing of her platform, but it tilted suddenly. She lost her balance. Everything happened in seconds. The platform lurched. The Queen fell forward. The guards were too far away. She was going to hit the ground from 30 feet up. Did not think. He ran. His body moved before his mind could stop it. He crossed the forbidden space, his arms outstretched. The Queen fell into them. He caught her, stumbling backward from the impact but keeping his feet. His arms wrapped around her automatically, steadying her. Time stopped. The throne room went absolutely silent. Even the alarms seemed to quiet, realized what he had done. He was holding the queen. His hands were on her back, her arm. He was touching her. He looked down at her face, inches from his own. She was staring at him with an expression he could not read. Not anger, not fear, something else. Her eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't think, I just—" The queen raised her hand. The gesture was sharp, commanding. The entire court seemed to lean forward. This was it. This was the signal. The guards would disintegrate him where he stood. But she did not give the order. Her hand hung in the air between them, trembling slightly. She was still in his arms. Neither of them had moved. "Touch me again, human," she said. The words echoed in the vast chamber. Herd Park gasped behind him. Commander made a strangled sound. The advisors began whispering frantically to each other. "What?" asked, not sure he had heard correctly. The queen pulled herself upright, stepping back from his arms, but she kept her eyes on his face. "You heard me. Touch me again." "Your Majesty, I can't. The law." "I am the law." Her voice was harder now, more like the recordings he had studied. "I command you to touch me." Looked at Commander, desperate for guidance. The commander looked as terrified as felt. No help there. Slowly, carefully reached out. His hand shook. He touched the queen's arm just above her wrist where his hand had been when he caught her. Her skin was cool, smooth, like touching silk. She inhaled sharply. Her whole body went rigid. For a moment thought he had hurt her, that this was some kind of trap. But then she closed her eyes. Her expression softened. She looked almost peaceful. "How strange," she murmured. "It does not hurt." Before anyone could respond, she opened her eyes and stepped back. Her face became unreadable again, the mask of a queen returning. "This audience is concluded. The human will remain aboard the eternal throne as my guest. The rest of you may return to your vessel." "Your Majesty," Commander started. "You are dismissed." The commander looked at. There was nothing he could do. Refusing the queen was not an option. He bowed and turned to leave, Park at his side. She gave one last terrified look. Then they were gone and was alone with the queen and her guards. She was still watching him, that strange curiosity in her eyes. "Come," she said. "We have much to discuss, you and I, and perhaps much more to discover about your species' strange customs." Followed her, knowing that his life had just changed in ways he could not begin to understand. Had been aboard the eternal throne for 3 days, and he still had no idea if he was a guest or a prisoner. His quarters were luxurious, larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, with a window showing the endless stars. But guards stood outside his door at all times. They brought him food, clothes, and anything he asked for, except his freedom. On the 4th day, the queen summoned him. The guards escorted him through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Everything was pristine, cold, beautiful in a way that felt empty. They passed hundreds of going about their duties, but none of them talked to each other. None of them touched. They moved through the halls like ghosts, separate and alone. The queen was waiting in a private chamber, much smaller than the throne room. It had windows on 3 sides showing the galaxy beyond. She stood looking out at the stars, her back to him. She wore simpler robes today, deep blue instead of the liquid starlight. She looked almost human from behind. Almost. "You may leave us," she said to the guards without turning around. They hesitated. One of them, braver than the others, spoke. "Your Majesty, the protocols." "Are mine to decide. Leave." They left. The door sealed shut. Was alone with the most powerful being in known space. "Do you know how long I have lived?" she asked, still facing the window. "The records say 3,000 years, Your Majesty." 3,217. She turned to face him. "Do you know how many times someone has touched me in all those years?" Shook his head. "Twice. Once when I was a child, before I understood the laws. My mother held my hand, I remember the feeling, and once 4 days ago when you caught me." She walked closer to him. Tell me, do all humans touch as easily as you did? I didn't mean to break your laws, it was instinct. You were falling and I just... Answer my question. Took a breath. Yes, Your Majesty. Humans touch all the time, we shake hands when we meet, we hug our friends, we hold hands with people we love. Parents touch their children constantly. It's how we comfort each other, how we show we care. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. We do not do these things. Our nervous systems are extremely sensitive. Physical contact causes sensory overload. It is painful. This is why we developed the laws, to protect ourselves. But when I touched you, you said it didn't hurt. Exactly. She moved closer still until she was just a few feet away. When you touched me, I felt warmth. Not pain, not overload, just warmth, and something else, something I do not have words for. I don't understand. If touch hurts your species, why didn't it hurt when I touched you? That is what I intend to discover. She raised her hand, holding it out between them. Touch me again. Looked at her hand. Her fingers were longer than human fingers, elegant and pale. He had already broken the most sacred law of her species. What did it matter if he did it again? He reached out and took her hand in his. Her fingers curled around his automatically, and he felt her tremble slightly. Her skin was cool but not cold. Smooth. She gripped his hand as if testing it, feeling the pressure. Describe what you feel, she commanded, but her voice was softer now. Your hand is cool, smooth. Your fingers are stronger than they look. You're shaking a little. I am not shaking. Do not shake. Your Majesty, you are definitely shaking. She looked at their joined hands. Perhaps I am. This is difficult, not painful, but intense. It is like my entire body is awake for the first time. She looked up at his face. Your species does this constantly. Several times a day, usually. How do you function? How do you think or work with such intensity? We're used to it. For us, it's normal, comfortable. She slowly pulled her hand away. He could see her breathing harder, as if she had been running. I need to understand this. If human touch does not cause pain, perhaps our species' sensitivity is different than we believed. Perhaps we have been isolating ourselves unnecessarily. A door opened and an older entered. He was tall like all of them, but his skin had a grayish tint, and his eyes held anger. Your Majesty, he said, bowing slightly, I must protest this continued contact with the human. The court is in chaos. The other empires are watching. This makes you look weak. The Queen said, her voice turning cold again. You forget yourself. I forget nothing. I have served you for 800 years. I have always counseled you wisely. And I tell you now, this path is dangerous. He glared at, this creature has corrupted you. This creature has shown me that we might have been wrong about our most fundamental beliefs. That is not corruption. That is revelation. It is weakness. Stepped closer. Already the lower castes whisper about you. They say you have been contaminated by human contact. They question your strength. Let them question. The Queen turned back to the window. Summon the medical staff. I want full scans of my nervous system and the humans. I want to understand why this is possible. Your Majesty, you are dismissed, N. The advisor left, but not before giving a look that promised violence. When the door closed, the Queen sighed. He is not wrong about the danger. If the court believes I am weakened, they may challenge me. Succession is not peaceful. Then maybe we should stop. I can go back to my ship. No, she turned to face him again. For 3,000 years I have ruled through strength and distance. I have been alone at the top, isolated by law and custom, and I thought that was how it must be. But when you touched me, when I felt that warmth, I realized something. I have been lonely. My entire species has been lonely. We call it strength, but perhaps it is just fear. She walked to him again, moving more confidently now. I want to learn about human touch, all of it. I want to understand how your species maintains connection, and I want to know if my people can learn it too. Your Majesty, this could change your entire culture. Yes, it could. She held out her hand again. Teach me how humans touch. Over the next hours, showed her things that felt absurdly simple. He taught her how to shake hands properly, how to put a hand on someone's shoulder in comfort. He explained hugs, though he did not demonstrate that one yet. She absorbed every detail like she was learning the secrets of the universe. With each touch, she became more comfortable. The trembling stopped. She began to initiate contact herself, reaching out to touch his hand or arm. Each time, that look of wonder crossed her face. On Earth, explained, we have studies showing that touch is necessary for healthy development. Babies who are not held often fail to thrive. Adults who lack physical connection suffer mentally and physically. Touch is not luxury for us. It is survival. The Queen sat down on one of the chamber's floating chairs, suddenly looking tired. We made a terrible mistake, she said quietly. Thousands of years ago, when we first developed our sensitivity, we chose isolation. We thought it made us strong. We built an empire on the principle of distance, and we have been slowly dying inside ever since. It's not too late to change. Isn't it? How do you teach an entire civilization to feel again? How do you undo 3,000 years of fear? Sat across from her, one person at a time, one touch at a time. If you believe this is right, others will follow. She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes. You have more faith in my people than I do. No, Your Majesty, I have faith in you. Something shifted in her expression. For just a moment, the mask of the eternal Queen fell away and saw something vulnerable underneath. Something human, even though she was anything but. Touch me again, she said softly, please. This time she reached for his hand first, and he met her halfway. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened within hours of the scandal breaking. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the massive chamber that orbited the neutral world of Keeper's Rest. Each species had their own methods of displaying outrage, but the message was universal. Queen Ara had violated the ancient ways, and humanity would pay the price. Ambassador stood in the human delegation pod, watching the chaos unfold. She was a veteran diplomat, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, and she had negotiated humanity's way through countless crises. But this one was different. This one might mean war. The chairman of the council, a crystalline being named, called for order. His voice resonated through every translator in the chamber. The matter before us is clear. The human designated violated the sacred law of the empire. He touched the Queen. By all historical precedent, this crime demands immediate execution. Furthermore, the human government must face sanctions for failing to properly train their representative. Activated her pod's communication system. With respect, Chairman, my government was not aware that saving someone's life would be considered a crime. The Queen was falling, acted on human instinct to prevent injury. A representative, not N but someone equally angry, responded immediately. Instinct is not an excuse for breaking divine law. The human showed disrespect to our entire civilization. Divine law, shot back. Or convenient law. Your species has isolated itself behind these rules for thousands of years. Perhaps it is time to question whether they serve you or imprison you. The chamber erupted. Species began arguing with each other, old alliances and rivalries surfacing. The Dominion, longtime rivals of the Empire, saw an opportunity. Their representative, High Chancellor's cousin, spoke with barely concealed pleasure. The Empire has based its power on the untouchability of its queen. If she can be touched by a mere human, if she is contaminated by lesser species, then perhaps she is no longer fit to rule. Perhaps the Empire itself is weakened beyond repair. Felt her blood run cold. This was not just about diplomatic protocol anymore. They were testing the waters for invasion. Before she could respond, every screen in the chamber flickered and changed. The council's communication system had been, which should have been impossible. The face that appeared on every screen made the entire chamber fall silent. Queen Ara looked directly into the camera, her expression calm and utterly controlled. "Members of the Galactic Council, you discuss my fitness to rule. You question my strength. You debate the fate of the human who saved my life. I will resolve this debate for you." She stood and the camera pulled back to show she was in her throne room, but she was not on her elevated platform. She was standing on the floor, and beside her stood. "This is of Earth," the Queen continued. "4 days ago he committed what you call a crime. He touched me. He caught me when I fell, and in doing so, he did something no one has done in 3,000 years. He showed me that my species has been wrong." Murmurs of shock ran through the council chamber. On the screens, the Queen reached out and took his hand. Gasps echoed from multiple species. "Have lived in isolation for," she said, her voice carrying the weight of her 3,000 years. "We believed our sensitivity to touch made us superior, made us pure. We built our culture on distance and separation. We made laws that prevented any physical connection, and we called it strength." She paused, still holding his hand. But it was not strength, it was fear. Fear of feeling, fear of vulnerability, fear of connection. The humans, whom many of you consider primitive because they still engage in physical contact, understand something we forgot. Touch is not weakness. Connection is not contamination. It is what makes life worth living. "This is madness," someone shouted in the council chamber, could not tell who. The Queen's eyes hardened. "Is it? Let me show you what I have discovered." She turned to show them. On every screen across the galaxy, billions watched as demonstrated a simple human hug. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around the Queen. She stood stiffly at first, then slowly, carefully, she returned the embrace. When they stepped apart, there were tears on her face. Could cry, realized. They just had not had reason to in a very long time. "That is what humans do to comfort each other," the Queen said, her voice slightly unsteady. "It is called a hug. It requires vulnerability. It requires trust. It requires being close enough to another being that they could hurt you and choosing connection over safety anyway. That is not primitive. That is courage we have lost." She wiped her face, and her voice became commanding again. "I am declaring a new era for the Empire. We will study human methods of connection. We will learn what we have forgotten. Any who wishes to participate may do so voluntarily, and any attack on humanity for this supposed crime will be considered an attack on me personally." The transmission cut off. The council chamber exploded into arguments. Some species were horrified, others were curious. The looked furious, their plans for exploiting weakness suddenly complicated. "Quickly contacted Captain, who commanded Earth's defense fleet stationed at the edge of the sector. Captain, we need full defensive positions. If they are going to move, it will be soon." "Already on it, Ambassador. But I have to ask, is the Queen serious about this? About learning human touch?" "I think she is, and I think it might change everything." On the Eternal Throne, N confronted the Queen the moment the broadcast ended. "You have destroyed us," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You have shown weakness to the entire galaxy. They will attack. The other houses will challenge you. Everything we have built will fall." "Then let it fall," the Queen said calmly. "I am tired of building empires on loneliness." "You cannot mean that. You are the Queen, you are." "I am 3,000 years old, and until 4 days ago I had forgotten what it felt like to be alive." She looked at, then back at her advisor. "I will not go back to the way things were. If that makes me unfit to rule in your eyes, then challenge me. Invoke the old rights. See if the court supports you." And stared at her, his alien features twisted with emotion. Finally, he bowed stiffly and left. Park contacted that evening on a secure channel. "Are you insane? The whole galaxy is watching. Half of them want to kill you, and the other half think you have somehow brainwashed the Queen." "I didn't brainwash anyone. I just showed her that there is another way to live. A way that might get Earth invaded by the Dominion. They are mobilizing fleets. The Council is in chaos. Looked at the Queen, who was in another part of the room, speaking with her medical staff. They were running scans, trying to understand why human touch did not cause her pain. What we are doing here is bigger than politics. If they can learn to connect again, if they can remember how to feel, it could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Or it could get us all killed. Maybe, but some things are worth the risk. The Queen approached him after the call ended. Your friend is worried. She has good reason. We might have started a war. Then we will finish it. She held out her hand. But first, you will teach me more. If we are going to change my species, I need to understand everything about human connection. Starting with why you put your arm around someone's shoulder when they are sad. Explain this to me. Took her hand, feeling the now familiar coolness of her skin. Among humans, we call it comfort. When someone is hurting, being close to them helps. The physical presence reminds them they are not alone. Not alone, she repeated softly. What a strange and wonderful concept. Outside the windows of the Eternal Throne, unknown to them, warships began moving into position. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if connection could prove stronger than conquest. The first volunteers arrived at the Human Integration Center on the moon of Sanctuary 3 weeks after the Queen's broadcast. There were only 12 of them, but they represented something unprecedented. For the first time in recorded history, we're actively seeking to learn from another species. Met them at the landing pad. She was a therapist specializing in trauma recovery, and she had been hastily recruited for this impossible assignment. She smiled warmly as the tall, pale aliens stepped off their shuttle. None of them smiled back. They looked terrified. Welcome, said through the translation device. I know this is difficult. What you are doing takes tremendous courage. One of a female named, spoke quietly. We saw the Queen's broadcast. We have lived our entire lives believing that touch would hurt us, but she looked peaceful when the human held her hand. We want to know if we can feel that too. Then come, let me show you. The Integration Center was designed to be non-threatening. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture. Human volunteers sat waiting, each trained in the protocols had developed with the Queen. Go slow, ask permission, respect boundaries, never force. Park was there, having left the Eternal Throne to help establish the program. She approached one of the volunteers, a young male named, Hi, if you are comfortable, I would like to shake your hand. It's a human greeting. Is that okay? Looked at her extended hand like it was a weapon. Will it hurt? It hasn't hurt any of the other who have tried. But if it does hurt, you tell me immediately and I'll stop. You are in control here. Slowly trembling, reached out. His long fingers touched hand. She gently closed her fingers around his, giving a soft, brief shake. Gasped. It's warm. I can feel your pulse. This is strange. But does it hurt? No, it doesn't hurt. He looked at his hand in wonder when she released it. It doesn't hurt. Across the room, similar scenes played out. Experiencing touch for the first time, discovering that the thing they had feared for thousands of years was actually safe. Several of them cried. One of them, an older male named, sat down heavily after his first handshake and did not speak for an hour. When he finally did, his words were simple. I am 300 years old. I have never felt connected to another being until this moment. On the Eternal Throne, Queen Ara watched the reports from the Integration Center with intense focus. Beside her, observed as she absorbed every detail. It is working, she said quietly. They are learning. The volunteers, yes. But what about the rest of your species? 12 out of billions is not exactly a revolution. Revolution starts small. She turned to him. I have made a decision. I want to expand the program. I am going to invite human teachers to the home world. I want integration centers on every major colony. Your Majesty, that is an enormous risk. There are still who think this is weakness. N is not alone in his opposition. I know, which is why I need you to do something for me. I need you to teach my daughter. Blinked, your daughter. I didn't know you had a daughter. Princess Ara. She is 200 years old and she is next in line for the throne. She has been watching from a distance, skeptical of all this. If she learns to accept human touch, others will follow. If she rejects it, my entire movement may collapse. Before could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. Crew members rushed to their stations. The Queen's communication panel lit up. N's face appeared. Your Majesty, we have a situation. The Dominion has attacked the Integration Center on Sanctuary 3. They are calling it a terrorist cell and claiming jurisdiction to eliminate it. Felt his blood turn to ice. Was there. The volunteers were there. Dispatch the fleet immediately, the Queen commanded. Full military response. Your Majesty, they have anticipated this. They have positioned their main battle group between us and Sanctuary 3. If we engage, it will be a full-scale war. The Queen stood, her robes swirling around her. Then it will be war. I will not abandon those people. Wait, said. Contact Earth's defense fleet. Captain, if we can coordinate with human forces. Human forces, and looked disgusted. They have 30 ships, we need hundreds. Maybe, but those 30 ships have human crews, and humans fight differently than you do. On Sanctuary 3, the attack had come without warning. Fighters screamed down from orbit, targeting the Integration Center. But they had underestimated the building's defenses and the determination of its occupants. Lee was a security specialist, former military, assigned to protect the center. When the first explosions hit, he did not hesitate. He grabbed the nearest volunteer and shielded her with his own body as debris rained down. She stared up at him in shock. You protected me. You do not even know me. Doesn't matter. Get to the shelter now. But the shelter had collapsed in the first strike. Volunteers huddled in corners, paralyzed by fear, realized they had never experienced violence like this. Their species resolved conflicts through cold calculation and remote warfare, not direct combat. Listen to me, he shouted over the explosions. I need you to move, follow me, stay close together. We cannot, said, his voice shaking. We are not warriors. You don't have to be warriors, you just have to trust me. Grabbed his arm. There are children here, 30 of them brought for early integration studies. We can't leave them. Then we take them with us. Where are they? Lower level, but that's where they are breaching. Made a decision. Get the volunteers out through the north exit. I'll get the children. You'll die. Maybe, but I'm not leaving kids behind. He ran toward the lower level, grabbing a plasma weapon from a fallen guard. Behind him, began organizing the terrified, speaking to them calmly, touching their arms to guide them, using the very techniques they had just learned to keep them moving. In the lower level, found chaos. Soldiers and armored were advancing through the corridors. The children, none older than 50 years by their species aging, were trapped in a classroom. Their teacher, a named Myra, stood in front of them, arms spread, knowing she could not stop the attackers but refusing to move. Appeared behind the soldiers. He opened fire not to kill but to distract. Hey, looking for someone who fights back, try me. The turned, ran, leading them away from the children. He ducked through doorways, using his knowledge of the building's layout. The followed, firing weapons that scorched the walls. He led them into the central atrium, where the ceiling had partially collapsed. As they entered, he fired at the damaged supports. The rest of the ceiling came down, blocking the corridor and trapping the soldiers. Ran back to the classroom. Come on, we need to move now. The children stared at him, too frightened to move. Myra looked at him with wide eyes. They will not go with you. They do not know you. Then make them know me, quickly. Myra knelt down, taking the hand of the nearest child. This human is helping us. He is using what we are learning, connection, trust. You must trust him. Slowly one child took his hand, then another. Within moments he had 30 children holding onto him or each other, forming a chain. They moved through the damaged building, staying together. In orbit, the battle had begun. Captain's fleet engaged the warships with tactics the aliens had never seen. Human pilots flew with intuition and improvisation, working together like a connected organism. They covered each other, anticipated each other's moves, communicated constantly. The fleet arrived moments later, and for the first time in history, two species fought side by side with true coordination. Human ships darted in close, using speed and agility. Vessels provided overwhelming firepower from range. Together, they were unstoppable. The retreated, their battle group severely damaged. On the surface, emerged from the building with all 30 children and their teacher. Medical teams rushed forward. Princess Ara was among them. She had come personally when she heard about the attack, unable to stay distant any longer. She saw, injured and exhausted, still holding the hand of a small child. The child was clinging to him, finding comfort in his presence despite being a different species. The princess approached slowly. You saved them. You risked your life for children that are not your own species. That's what humans do, Your Highness. We protect those who need protecting. She looked at the children, all of them still holding onto the human or each other, using the very connections they had just learned to find comfort in trauma. I need to understand this. What you did. What my mother is teaching. She held out her hand, trembling slightly. Will you teach me? Despite his exhaustion, took her hand gently. It would be an honor, Your Highness. And on the eternal throne, Queen Ara watched the reports and knew that everything had changed. Her species was learning to feel again. And in learning to feel, they were becoming something they had never been before. They were becoming alive. The war came 6 months after the attack on Sanctuary 3. The Dominion had been watching, waiting, gathering strength. They saw learning to touch, learning to connect, learning to feel emotions they had suppressed for, and they believed this made them weak. High Chancellor addressed his war council with confidence. The empire has fallen into chaos. Their queen embraces primitive customs. Their soldiers waste time learning to hold hands like children. Their focus has shifted from strength to sentiment. Now is the time to strike. We will crush them and claim their territories. The galaxy will be ours. The fleet was massive. 3,000 warships, carrying millions of soldiers. They jumped into space simultaneously, attacking colony worlds across 100 light-years. It was the largest military action in 2 centuries. The initial reports were devastating. Colonies fell within hours. They had calculated correctly that the integration programs had disrupted military readiness. Bases that once ran with cold efficiency were now filled with learning human customs, exploring emotions, discovering connection. They were not prepared for war. Or so it seemed. On the flagship The Eternal Throne, Queen Ara received the reports without visible emotion. Around her stood her war council, including several humans who had become advisors. Was there. So was Captain. Ambassador had arrived from Earth. They think we have become weak, the Queen said quietly. They believe that feeling makes us vulnerable. Your Majesty, In said, and there was no satisfaction in his voice despite having warned against this path. Our forces are unprepared. The integration programs have disrupted our military structure. The Chancellor was correct. We are vulnerable. No, the Queen stood and her presence filled the room. We were vulnerable before, when we were cold, when we were isolated, when we fought because we were told to, not because we cared. They have made a fatal error. They think soldiers who feel are weaker. They have never fought soldiers who have something to protect. She activated the fleet-wide communication. Her face appeared on every ship, every colony, every station. This is your queen. The Dominion attacks us because they believe we have become weak through connection. They believe emotion is a flaw. Let us show them why they are wrong. 6 months ago, many of you experienced touch for the first time. You learned what it means to hold someone's hand, to embrace, to feel the warmth of another being. Some of you have families now, connections you never imagined possible. Some of you have friends from other species, humans who taught you that feeling is not weakness. Her voice hardened. They want to take that away from you. They want to kill everyone you have learned to care about. They want to return us to isolation, to the cold emptiness we lived in for 3,000 years. Will you let them? The response was instantaneous. Across the empire, who had learned to feel now felt something new, protective fury. They armed themselves, not because protocol demanded it, but because they had people they loved, and they would die before letting the destroy that. The human fleet, though small, moved to support. Captain coordinated with commanders, and for the first time, the communication was not just tactical, it was personal. Officers who had learned human customs now understood the jokes their human counterparts made to ease tension. They recognized encouragement in a pat on the shoulder. They felt the solidarity in fighting alongside someone who cared about them. The battle for the colony of Ara showed the difference. They attacked with overwhelming numbers, expecting quick surrender. Instead, they found soldiers who fought with a ferocity they had never displayed before. Soldiers who covered each other, who risked themselves to save wounded comrades, who communicated with emotional urgency rather than cold calculation. And fighting beside them were humans. Not many, but enough. Human soldiers who moved through the battlefield with that strange human ability to keep fighting even when logic said to retreat, who pulled wounded to safety, who stood back to back with alien allies and made jokes while firing weapons. Lee, a human psychologist who had stayed on Ara to continue integration programs, found herself in the middle of the battle. She had no military training, but when soldiers breached the shelter where children were hiding, she did what humans do. She stood in their way. "You want to hurt them," she shouted at the armored insects. "You go through me first." They laughed, a clicking, chittering sound. They raised their weapons. And then 30 civilians who had learned human courage stepped forward with her. They had never fought before, but they had learned something from humans. Sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because some things matter more than survival. They hesitated, confused by this behavior. In that moment, soldiers arrived, led by Princess Ara herself. She had spent 6 months learning from who stood beside her now. She fought with precision, but also with passion. She was protecting her people, not subjects, people she cared about. The battle turned. They found themselves facing something they could not understand. Soldiers who fought harder when protecting others than when protecting themselves. Soldiers who took risks to save wounded allies. Soldiers who coordinated through bonds of trust rather than just training. In space, the human fleet demonstrated the same advantage. Human pilots' creativity combined with technology was devastating. More importantly, they trusted each other. When a human ship was damaged, vessels moved to protect it without orders. When a formation was breaking, human fighters dove in to support it. Captain worked alongside the Admiral the same who had been one of the first volunteers at the Integration Center. They had learned to understand each other's thinking. Had even picked up human habits, occasionally making jokes over the command channel to keep morale up. His crew, once silent and separate, now worked as a connected unit, and they were unstoppable. They kept coming, kept attacking, but something was going wrong with their strategy. They had calculated based on the old empire, cold and efficient but without passion. They had not calculated for who fought like humans, who fought with heart. High Chancellor watched his casualty reports with growing horror. His forces were not just losing. They were being overwhelmed by an enemy that should have been weaker. He could not understand it. The turning point came at the Battle of Sanctuary 3, the same moon where the first integration center had stood. They threw their remaining reserves into the fight, determined to destroy the symbolic location. They found Queen Ara herself waiting for them. She stood on the rebuilt integration center, and around her stood thousands who had learned to feel, humans who had taught them, other species who had been watching and had chosen a side. The Queen's voice broadcast across all frequencies. You came here to destroy connection, to prove that isolation makes us strong. You are wrong. Watch. She reached out and took his hand. Around them, thousands of beings did the same, holding hands with humans, different species connected, united not by law or fear but by choice, by care. The image broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as the Queen of the Empire, ruler of 300 star systems, held a human's hand in front of an invading army and smiled. This is our strength, she said. Not weapons, not isolation, connection. Every being here would die to protect the others. Can you say the same, Chancellor? Do your soldiers fight for each other, or do they fight because you command it? They attacked, and they broke like a wave against stone. The unified forces fought with a coordination and determination that pure military doctrine could not predict. They fought for each other. By nightfall, they were retreating. Within a week, they sued for peace. They had lost not because they were, but because they were outcared. They fought soldiers who had learned to love, and love makes people dangerous in ways strategy cannot calculate. The war ended. The galaxy had changed. Ambassador Shin Bora stood before the reformed Galactic Council months later. The chamber was different now. Representatives did not stand in isolated pods. They sat in a mixed chamber, different species interacting, occasionally even touching in greeting. The Treaty of Connection is simple, Bora explained. Every species has the right to develop emotionally and physically on their own terms. No more mandatory isolation protocols. No more laws preventing contact between individuals who choose it. Connection is a fundamental right. The vote was not unanimous. Some species still believed in the old ways, but it passed. The galaxy would change, slowly, carefully. Species who had isolated themselves for countless reasons were now questioning whether they had lost something valuable. On the eternal throne, Queen Ara walked through her ship, now filled with sounds that had never existed before, talking to each other, laughing, occasionally touching a shoulder or shaking hands. Her empire was transforming. She found in the observation deck, looking at the stars. She approached and stood beside him, and without asking, she took his hand. It was natural now, comfortable. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Catching me when I fell, you changed the entire galaxy." "No regrets. Do you regret asking me to touch you again?" She was quiet for a moment. "For 3,000 years I ruled through distance. I was powerful, I was feared, I was lonely. You showed me that true strength is not isolation. It is connection, vulnerability, caring about others enough to let them close even when it is frightening." "That's very human of you, Your Majesty." She smiled, an expression she had learned from him. Perhaps humans and are not so different after all. Perhaps all beings want the same thing, to be known, to be understood, to be touched, not in conquest but in compassion. Around them, crew members passed by. Some were human. They worked together, talked together, occasionally laughed together. The distance that once defined the ship was gone. "What will you do now?" asked. "Continue. There are hundreds of species in this galaxy, and many of them are like we were, isolated, afraid, calling their fear strength. We will teach them what you taught us, one connection at a time." She raised their joined hands slightly. "And it all started because you caught me when I fell." "Actually," said, "it started because you asked me to touch you again." "So it did." She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes that had once seemed so cold but now held warmth. "Touch me again, human." He did, and across the galaxy, billions of beings were learning to do the same. Learning that the space between stars is vast and cold, but the space between people does not have to be. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not technology or weapons. It was the simple, profound truth that connection is not weakness. It is what makes life worth living. And sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to reach out and touch another. The Queen raised her hand, and this time it was not in command. It was in friendship. And that made all the difference.